All right. Shall we start? Good evening, everyone. I'm Anthony Dixon, and I'm the founder and CEO of a consultancy called Metanoia, which specializes in working with schools on issues of sustainability. And I founded Metanoia 3 years ago to work with schools initially in Hong Kong, where I live. And we've recently started branching out to work with schools in the wider APAC region and also the Middle East. Our core product is a whole school sustainability audit. And in this presentation, I want to just talk to you about the approach to the whole school sustainability audit that we take. And in particular, in the last several months, we've developed an assessment tool, a self-assessment tool for schools that attempts to distill the essence of what a sustainable school is into 25 questions. And I'm sure I can hear, if I could hear you laughing, there would be laughter in the background. But what I'd like to show you today is the results of our initial data that we've received from the schools that have taken the survey so far, and to I think you will find them quite interesting. So I'll introduce the 5 C's model that we work with, and briefly talk about the audit, and then introduce the sustainability tool that we've developed, and walk you through some of the data that we've received from the responses so far. We have, so as I said at the beginning, by way of introduction, we're a team of technical sustainability consultants. So we're engineers and environmental scientists and commercial people with business degrees. And we work with schools on a partnership model to really try to bring about catalytic transformation in the sustainability of the school community. And we work across with all the stakeholder groups in the school community, including, of course, the students, and also look at every different aspect of the school's life, everything from governance to the usual suspects when you're doing a sustainability audit, energy, water and travel and so on, to the way in which the school communicates about its sustainability narrative, and also the degree to which students participate in the decision making around sustainability. We have from the backgrounds of our employees and also the work that we've been doing with schools over the last several years, we have a deep technical knowledge of the different environmental challenges and practical solutions that schools face. And we bring that to the table as advisors and trusted partners to our clients, who have included, and this is the thing that you should be aware of, all of the schools that have responded to this and that are our client base are primarily international schools, and we'll talk about what that means and the different types of international schools. But so far we have not done any of this work with government schools. In putting together the sustainability assessment tool, we had input from our partners, the Cloud Institute for Sustainability Education in New York, and I want to acknowledge their contribution to the format of this assessment tool, and also to acknowledge the original source of the audit model that we've adapted for our and updated, and that was the UK government's Department for Children, Schools and Families, as it was called in 2006 under the Blair government, and they published something called the 8 Doorways for Sustainable Schools, which really has gone into dormancy many years ago, and we've revived it, dusted it off, tried to modernize it and make it our own. So that is the original source of much of our work. And this is what we call the audit wheel. So we work within the framework of the 5 C's that Paul spoke about earlier: campus, curriculum, culture, community, and communication. And in the process of the audit, we cover these 12 different segments that you can see in the wheel. and we do it in a student-centered way. So to the extent possible, with curriculum demands and timetabling demands, students lead much of this. They undertake many of the tasks of measurement and analysis with our guidance, and indeed the storytelling around the findings of the audit. A full audit takes an entire academic year. So we start at the beginning of the year, and the students work through one by one up until the end of the academic year, when they present the key findings to their peers and to the leadership team and the board of directors. So what we've attempted to do here is to use the 5 C's to encapsulate what a sustainable school is. And this is simplistic. I don't apologize for that. I'm trying to distill years of reading and knowledge and experience into pithy paragraphs to try to, and please feel free to speak your feedback into this session here. But so what is a sustainable school? In the campus dimension, a sustainable school has an energy efficient, low carbon or carbon neutral campus. It's a campus that operates with a minimum amount of waste and is biodiverse. It has sustainable supply chains and low carbon transport options. And an important part of sustainable campus is that it's a living laboratory that is used to educate for sustainability. So the teaching tools, the campus becomes the teaching tool, as it were. And on a sustainable campus, the school community is seeking opportunities to improve its footprint in a continuing way, in ways that really move the needle and actively support the implementation of those measures to reduce the footprint of the campus. In the dimension of curriculum, a sustainable school, I would say, graduates students who are sustainability literate, having the skills and competencies to co-create our sustainable future. And the school offers a range of professional learning opportunities to help teachers in this way to educate for sustainability and to sustainabilize, for want of a better word, the curricula that is their specialization. So how do you sustainabilize a history curriculum or a drama curriculum or a chemistry curriculum, for example? There are ways to do that, and it's not about putting more content in necessarily. It's about finding a different perspective on the existing content. In addition, there are authentic project-based learning courses related to sustainability. Arjun Wals made a quote, said something in a video that I saw online a while back that really stuck with me. He said, "Sustainable schools breathe sustainability." And that, for me, encapsulates wonderfully what the culture of a sustainable school is. And sustainability is part of such a school's ethos and values. It's evident in the governance, planning, and decision-making of the school. And it's really woven into the fabric of the everyday life, the day-to-day activities of the school. The school has policies and practices that support a culture of sustainability and broad stakeholder engagement on sustainability challenges and issues. In terms of the community dimension, a sustainable school cultivates and sustains partnerships with community organizations to address shared sustainability challenges. Schools develop partnerships like these that sustainable schools develop partnerships like these that provide opportunities for authentic real-world learning and collaborative problem solving. And the 5th C is communication. And I missed hearing what Paul had to say about this when he spoke about the 5 C's, but we have come to really appreciate how important communication is for supporting and progressing the sustainability work that schools do. And when this is done poorly, all the other dimensions of sustainability struggle to take root. And when it's done well, all of the other dimensions of sustainability are well supported and thrive and flourish. So sustainable schools understand the fundamental role that communication plays in supporting the other 4 C's and embedding sustainability in the ethos, culture, and everyday practices of the school. And they develop a strategic approach to communication. This is important, which involves dialogues and narratives that facilitate and enrich the school's sustainability journey. So often in our work with schools, we see communication in a kind of that is actually a monologue, and it's unidirectional, doesn't involve engaging with the community. It's often preaching to the choir, and it's really about simply passing on information. That is not the kind of communication that needs to happen, and it's not the kind of communication that we look for in a sustainable school. Let me stop there, and I'd love to hear your feedback on any of these points. This is just merely setting the scene for the assessment tool that I will introduce in a moment. Does anyone have any comments? No? All right, I will move on. So in putting together this assessment tool, we wanted to try to achieve three things. We wanted to distill what are the essential aspects of sustainability in schools into a short self-assessment tool that heads of schools, school senior teachers, even students could complete in about 5 to 7 minutes. That would not only help us gather data to form a picture of what stage the schools are at, and there's very little data that I'm aware of about these questions, but also to plant seeds within the school community and the people filling out the survey to stimulate their thinking and to initiate a conversation about what else could they do and what are they not doing and what are they doing well. So after a lot of work and discussion and thought, we came up with just 25 questions, 5 questions for each of the 5 C's. And this spider chart is part of the output. So I will share in the chat later in this session the link to the survey and invite you to do it either for interest or on behalf of the school that you're involved with. And the spider chart basically enables the school to compare their results from this questionnaire with the average of other schools that have taken the survey. And in addition to receiving this chart, they get a 3-page report with some suggestions about what they could be doing that they might not be doing, or what they could think about doing next, and how we can assist. So I have to say the exercise of trying to come up with these 25 questions was terrific. It engendered an enormous amount of discussion, was really challenging. We could easily have ballooned this survey to 75 questions, but we wanted to make it something that people could do without having to go and do a lot of research, and without and would be able to answer it basically from the information they had in their head. It's obviously just a starting point, and it obviously simplifies things, but it's useful. So we've also adopted a scoring scale, 2 scoring scales, in fact. The overall score that a school receives from all 25 questions is categorized into a rating scale consisting of 5 levels, from on the left-hand side at the top there, from just getting started through emerging, developing, to rising star, and at the top end of the scoring scale, a school could be a trailblazer. We've yet to meet one. And we've assigned, because it's a school, of course, we've assigned a grade. And there are pros and cons to doing that, and a little bit with tongue in cheek, I think. But if you're in the just getting started category, you will be given a D, and if you're in the rising star category, an A, and if you're a trailblazer, an A+. So this school here has received a B, and they're labeled as a developing, or they're categorized as a developing sustainable school. And then within each of the 5 dimensions, within each of the 5 C's, you also get a grade based on your score in that particular dimension. So I preface what follows by letting you know that the sample size for the statistics at the moment is very small. It's about 30. We've just launched this survey a couple of weeks ago, and we have 30 responses, and the data here, we have a few more than that. The data here is based on the first 30 responses that we've received. It is entirely an international school cohort, but as you can see from these graphs, it is also quite diverse. So by country, there are roughly 10 different countries, all in the Asia and Middle East region. And they are diversified by tier, and the tier is basically assigned based on the school fees. So there are no government schools here, but the lowest tier, the tier 3 schools, will have fees of less than $10,000 a year, and tier 2 schools will have fees of between $10,000 and $20,000 a year, and the tier 1 schools will have fees in excess of $20,000 a year. So we have a reasonable spread of international schools by economics, if fees are a proxy for that, and then also a reasonable geographic spread in the Asian and the APAC and Middle Eastern region. That's going. So how have schools scored? Let me just see if, yeah. About 73% of the schools that have responded to the survey so far have scored either in the emerging category or in the developing category. Very few have been classified as a rising star, and nobody is a trailblazer. So, you know, I think what this tells us as a big picture takeaway is that schools are active in this area, trying to do things, and based on the conversations that we have with them on a daily basis, schools really need direction in many cases on where to go next and what to do next and how to wrap all this together in a coherent and strategic way. Very few schools, as we'll see in a minute, have a long-term vision for their sustainability journey. They don't know where they're trying to get to. And they're picking the low-hanging fruit, and they're doing the obvious things right now, but they don't know what's next. On average, what we found, so the chart here shows the quartile distribution. The median is the middle line in the spider web, and the upper quartile is the outer line, and the lower quartile is the inner line. And the takeaway from this is that schools seem to be doing better in the area of curriculum, communication, and culture, where the median score is a B, and they seem to be doing less well in the area of campus and communication, where I would say the largest improvements are unrealized, and the median score in those two dimensions is a C. And I think that, you know, community is a hard one, because I think many schools don't, you know, most schools operate as islands in the community, and as the data will show in a minute, very few of them have active engagement with their community. So that this is an undeveloped area of practice, I think, in sustainable schools, and this data supports that. And in respect of the campus, I think it's probably an issue of cost largely, and also of the available windows to make campus improvements, because these improvements can mostly only be done during vacation periods. So campus and community are difficult ones, and are the laggards, I think, in terms of what we're seeing schools undertake. Curriculum, communication, and culture, of course, are also conversely low-cost options, where it doesn't require a lot of investment, by and large, to take action. So I want to now present some of the findings of the data from the initial data in each of the 5 dimensions. So with respect to campus, the first question in the campus section is a question about energy. And the question is, it starts with a statement that energy use in buildings accounts for something like 17% of global greenhouse gas emissions. the implication is, what's your school doing about that? And the response that is invited is, the school has implemented the following energy savings or energy efficiency measures. There are 6 choices: doing nothing, encouraging or incentivizing behavior change, upgrading equipment to be more energy efficient, monitoring our energy consumption and setting targets to reduce it, generating or procuring renewable energy, or something else. And you can choose, except for if you choose answer A, you can't choose any others, but if you choose B, C, D, or E or F, you can choose multiple options. So they may be doing more than one thing. And what we found here is that 81% of schools are doing at least one thing in order to reduce the energy consumption or to use renewables. But the most popular action that schools chose in responding to this was encouraging behavior change and monitoring or setting targets to reduce energy. The question about travel asks what is the school doing to reduce or offset its emissions from commuting and school-related overseas travel? And there are 5 possible options. And most of what we learned from this data is that majority of schools are not yet taking any action in this area on travel and transport. It's almost as if they've outsourced. It's a scope 3 emissions problem. The delivery of the service is outsourced, and therefore it's out of sight and out of mind in some ways. But among the schools that are taking action, the most popular action that they're taking is to encourage behavior change. In other words, a mode shift to get students perhaps to walk to school instead of being driven, or to take a train or ride a bicycle. Similar question was asked about food, and what we found is that nearly 70% of schools are doing at least one thing to reduce food-related impacts, but by far the most popular action was something to do with food waste. It's separating food waste, encouraging less generation of food waste at source, and where possible, composting it on site. And with respect to campus buildings, as I alluded to in the overview comments, 42% of schools aren't doing anything about this. And the ones that are doing something, the most popular action is apparently establishing policies to ensure that new buildings are operationally energy efficient. And I, if I had to guess, the reason for this 42% not doing anything is to do with the cost of retrofitting the buildings to be more energy efficient. The second section of the assessment tool delves into what the school is doing in the area of curriculum, and I'm using curriculum extremely broadly when I use the term here. So it means formal, non-formal, informal curriculum, and also hidden curriculum. And we've used in this part of the questionnaire, we sometimes use this particular scale to gauge the school's answer. The scale is derived from some social research by people like Prochaska in 1992, who looked at what behaviors contributed to somebody quitting smoking, for example. That's the origin of this scale. And it's been recently brought to life again in a paper by Duffin and Perry, and also by Jamie Cloud of the Cloud Institute. So there's 5 stages from pre-contemplation to maintaining, and those stages move. So pre-contemplation is I'm not planning on doing anything anytime soon. Contemplating means I'm thinking about it, but I don't know yet, whether it makes sense. Preparing means I'm actively preparing to take action. Beginning to act means I'm starting to do something, but in the school context, not everybody in the school community is fully involved. And maintaining means this particular change has become the new normal. Everyone in the school community is involved, and we've been doing it for quite a while. So we asked a number of questions about curriculum. The first one focused on education for sustainability. The statement was, we've adopted education for sustainability or environmental literacy standards, and we've aligned those standards with our core curriculum, vertically and laterally, and we're systematically embedding education for sustainability where appropriate. Obviously, that's a high bar, and what the data shows so far is that about 70% of the schools that responded have not adopted EFS standards and are not embedding sustainability in the curriculum. So those are the three bars here below, preparing to act. And I guess that's not entirely surprising, but it's also a major opportunity. So another statement we make relates to the use of the campus as a living laboratory. And the statement is, we utilize our campus as a living laboratory for sustainability education and provide authentic project-based learning opportunities that allow the students to contribute to the sustainability of the school. Again, only 35% of responding schools said that they were either doing this or in the maintenance state of change. So massive opportunity here. And this for us is a large part of what the whole school, an important factor, an important component of the whole school approach to sustainability. Sustainability learning opportunities are all around the students and the teachers, embedded in the campus and the life of the school, and developing those are a terrific opportunity. The next question relates to professional learning and coaching. Does the school provide professional learning and coaching opportunities to support teachers in developing their knowledge, capacity, and competencies in respect of education for sustainability? And again, perhaps unsurprisingly, based on what we've heard from others in the last couple of days, 65% of responding schools in our survey are not yet doing this, are not yet providing professional development in the area of sustainability. And the question of sustainability literacy. How do we know that our students graduate with whatever we define to be sustainability literacy? Do we assess for it? And if so, what does that assessment tell us? Don't ask me how to assess for it, but I think that's not my expertise. But the question is, don't we have a responsibility to be graduating students that have sustainability literacy? And in this survey, we've learned that none of the schools who responded actually do this. None of them assess for sustainability literacy, and none of them can say hand on heart that they know that most of their graduates are in fact sustainability literate. Some of them say we assess for it and we know that some of our graduates are sustainability literate, and some say that we don't assess for it, but we believe that most of our graduates are sustainability literate. But I think the assessment in this case is an important metric, because in my experience, and talking to graduates from international schools, very few of them would say that they themselves were sustainability literate when they graduated from school. And certainly it's true, I believe, that it's quite easy to go through the 5 years of secondary school and come out the other end with a minimum amount of sustainability competency and literacy. In most of the common curriculums that we deal with, it requires you to be a geography student or perhaps a biology student, or rarely a physics student. But if you're studying history and classics and languages, chances are you won't pick up much sustainability in the 5 years of secondary school. And then, of course, the hidden curriculum. So the question we've asked here, or the statement we made in the survey, was, we recognise that there may be things in the hidden, the survey respondent, the school, recognise that there may be things in the hidden curriculum at our school which undermine or contradict our efforts to educate for sustainability, and we are taking steps to address them. And the hidden curriculum, we remind the respondents, refers to the unspoken or implicit academic, social, and cultural messages that are communicated to students by virtue of their being in the school. 73% of responding schools said we're not really aware of hidden curriculum issues. So the hidden curriculum is indeed hidden. even to the people, the teachers and the school leaders. Then we move on to the area of, well, let me pause again there and ask if anyone has any questions about any of the slides I presented.
I have one question. Can you hear me? I don't have my mic on, but because you work very in depth with schools, and I think that year-long audit is like an eco school environmental assessment times, I don't know, times 100. It's very in depth. But then this online audit tool that you're developing is like an entry point, and I just wonder how you see them working together, or and also I have a question about the giving grades or assessment, because I think maybe in some cultures that's even more important than in other cultures. So like how to support this on a, not just with one school, but I just wonder about your tool. Sorry, it's not a very well-formed question.
No, that's two great questions. The first one first, Rosalie. They're very different approaches. So as far as I know, none of the respondents to the survey so far have done a whole school sustainability audit. And I think we've started with the development of our work over the last 3 years. The starting point was the audit, and we've evolved that audit, and it's quite a thoughtful and as you say, thorough, but also well-honed procedure now. And we've developed this survey tool based on our experience in the audit. So in many ways, a lot of the questions in the assessment tool lead into things that we would do with the school and the students when we do the audit. They're obviously at opposite ends of the scale in terms of depth, and as you rightly said, the survey tool being 25 questions and would take someone 5 minutes to answer is no more than an entry point and a conversation starter, really. But I don't think that diminishes the value of the data. I think the people, for the most part, who are filling in the audit, responding to it, are senior people in the school who are often sustainability leads, sometimes school principals, who understand the school deeply and are committed to sustainability. So, for the most part, I think this is an honest and pretty comprehensive picture, albeit with a small sample size at the moment. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I remember before you've mentioned about the international baccalaureate. Is that right? The school's curriculum doesn't really have ESD in it so far. So maybe this is a way to present this to them too, about. But also about the grading and the more competitive, or that side of it. I want, because you're from Hong Kong, and maybe that's very different to how schools work and want to grade themselves in Norway. That was my other question.
It's an interesting, point. If I understood your question, it's really you're asking what is the impact of using grades when you might be dealing with schools from completely different cultures, and in some cultures the grades are helpful, in some cultures they're less helpful.
We're talking about de-emphasizing testing, but then Jos earlier talking about we need to test even more, but maybe in different. It's just something that I'm thinking about, and I wonder, because in where you are, maybe that's very important to have these grades and testing and competitions? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's I can see both sides. I think, and I have my own reservations about assigning grades in this process to, I don't think sustainability is something that we should be grading, but I do, on the other hand, believe that it's important to have indicators of progress. And as we'll see a little bit further in this presentation, there's a slide that talks about whether schools actually monitor their progress and use KPIs and communicate the KPIs and set targets. And as the saying goes, what gets measured gets managed. Not everything about sustainability can be measured, in quantitative terms, and therein lies the challenge, I guess. But so I have mixed feelings about the grading scale, but at the same time, we did want to lay out a little bit of a ladder for schools, and I think most people understand that it's a crude way of communicating that there's, where you still have more work to do with all the limitations that implies. But so far, I think in the regions where we're working and the regions where the respondents have come from, I think it's fair to say everyone understands the grade language. And yeah, I think what we are trying to do is stimulate a little bit of competition between schools to, the purpose of feeding back to a school in the original spider chart what their median score is relative to the median of the whole school cohort, is to shake them up a little bit, for someone to go to the principal or the board of governors and say, look, we think we're good at this and this, but this is where we stand on sustainability relative to everybody else out there. That data just doesn't exist. This is really the only source of data. This is the first time that I've seen any widespread data reported on these things in schools, and it's still a very small sample size, but schools live in their own little bubble many times, and except when it comes to university entrance scores, where that data is available, and they're always looking over their shoulder at the next, who did better than they did and what the average score was for the students who graduated. At least in the IB world, in the international school world, that is true, and certainly here in Hong Kong. And we would like there to be that level of competition, for want of a better word, and comparison and transparency about the sustainability of schools, to the extent that it can be distilled in this way. So we move on to the area of culture. So culture runs to governance, as well as sort of mission, vision and values of the school. And so we started with a statement about policies. And the statement is, we have sustainability policies in place and we evaluate their effectiveness. Well, only 31% of responding schools have sustainability policies in place. And that's, I think, quite a low number. And it's not an easy thing to do, to draft sustainability policies in a school, but it's a very valuable exercise when it's done right. It's a terrific way of, it's one way, but it's also a terrific way of beginning to embed sustainability practices and behaviours in the school community. So we work with schools in a participatory process that can last months to research policies and to draft them in a way that they will be effective when they're implemented. The next statement is, we have a long-term vision for the sustainability of our school in 5 or 10 years. Our sustainability is part of our strategic plan, and it's explicitly included in our mission statement and values. And again, a very low number of schools were able to say that they're doing this well. Only 27% had a long-term vision for sustainability at their school and included it in their strategic plan. And I think part of the reason for that is that it's very difficult to visualize a different, it's difficult to envision a sustainable school. Most people have trouble imagining that and articulating what that actually means. So of course it's hard for a school to have a long-term vision for where they're going sustainability-wise, and and by extension it's difficult for schools, to include it in their strategic plan because they don't have a vision of where they want to be. And so this is an important aspect of culture and something that we emphasize. Then the role of leadership in setting the tone in the school around sustainability and expressing commitment to it is obviously critical. And one of the observations that we made in the case study that appears in the book, in the report, as you know, Rosalie, was that a key ingredient for success is that this sustainability efforts in a school, sustainability initiatives need to be both bottom up and top down. So the role of the school leadership is critical for success. We need to have both are necessary, but neither one is sufficient. So 72% of the schools in this cohort have said that their school leadership believes sustainability is an important issue and voice their commitment to it. That may be because the people filling in the report may be heads of school. It also may be because the people filling in the report have the title of sustainability leader, which has been bestowed upon them by the head of school. So this may be it may not be a completely unbiased result, but it is a good result. And then the dimension of communication. So this is something that schools, by and large, don't do very well. And the first statement is about KPIs. So the statement is, we measure and communicate our sustainability performance against key performance indicators, and we use this data in creative ways in our communication to engage the whole school community. Only 22% of the responding schools do that. Only 22% of them measure and communicate their performance against identified KPIs. It's really a very simple thing to do for a school to say, we are aiming to reduce our energy consumption by 2% a year for the next 3 years. That's not a difficult statement to make. It's not actually a difficult target to achieve in most cases, but it's remarkable that very few schools, in fact none that we know of, actually do this at the moment. It's also probably a low-cost option because if your target is 2% per year, most of that can be achieved through behaviour change. You don't need to invest in energy efficiency equipment and solar modules and all the rest. And then information. One of the things that surprises us in our work is how there are pockets of sustainability impressiveness in schools. But that it might be the case that 90% of the school community has no idea that they're there. They don't know what the school's doing with respect to sustainability. They don't know some of the terrific infrastructure that's been installed that is sustainability. The school might have solar modules on the roof, and if you interviewed parents at the front gate about whether the school had those modules, they wouldn't know. So there's a communications breakdown going on here, information, and this is designed to sort of identify that and actually supports our own observations. The statement we make in the survey is, information about our sustainability initiatives and performance is easily accessible and effectively communicated to the whole school community. Most people in the school community are well aware of our sustainability initiatives and targets. Well, only 11% of responding schools said that that statement is true, or that it describes them either quite well or very well. And then the other question we asked got to the point of about stakeholder engagement. And the stakeholder engagement statement is, There is an active ongoing dialogue among all the stakeholders in our school community about sustainability at our school, and the conversation shapes our decisions and actions. And again, real failure, for want of a better term, in this area here. Only 7% of respondents are doing a very good job of engaging stakeholders around sustainability. Tends to be the province of small groups of interested students and teachers in most cases, and often those interested parties are, when they communicate about what's going on, it's a one-way communication to people who are like-minded. So this is far away from full stakeholder engagement and active dialogue. And the final dimension is the dimension of community, which implies really community engagement between the school and the local community. And the three pieces of data that I want to share with you have to do with, first of all, partnerships with community groups. We've heard a lot of talk about the importance of this in the last couple of days. The statement is, our school have partnerships with local community-based groups. The partnerships serve many different purposes and the relationships are developed and nourished over time. Well, the good news is 46% of the respondents have long-term partnerships with community groups. And I think that probably is reflective of the fact that it's part of the international school model to really engage with the community in various ways. Often it's through the model of the school going out into the community and providing a service that the students do with a community-based group. So there might be some clarification needed here. It's not clear whether these partnerships are around the issue of sustainability. They might equally well be working with homeless people or feeding the hungry. Community projects. Our school partners with local community-based groups to provide opportunities for sustainable community development projects, project-based and place-based learning, as well as internships and mentorships for our students related to sustainability. 54% of schools don't do this, or they only do it to a limited extent. So again, there's lots of opportunity there for development. And finally, how well does the school integrate in an authentic way its parents, community members, and volunteers into sustainability initiatives and its efforts in sustainability education? And the data shows very limited integration. So that's the preliminary picture that we are forming, and I look forward to having a sample size that is an order of magnitude at least larger in the near future, and to sharing the data with you to see whether it confirms what the initial figures show. But I wanted to close my part of this session with just some reflections on what I think the limitations are of what I've just presented and the survey itself. One thing I think is a limitation is that the survey tells us what is being done, but it doesn't tell us how well it's being done. It doesn't tell us how impactful it is, and it doesn't tell us the extent of what's being done. And so an example that comes to mind here is that a school may say in the survey, yes, we're using renewable energy, we've installed renewable energy on the campus. But in many cases, when we hear that from a school, what's actually happened is that the school's put 2 solar panels on the roof and tick the box, when actually, if they really made an effort, it would be possible to put 200 solar panels on the roof and many solar panels on the walls. So, this is just that data isn't available from the survey as in its present form. Neither do we know, if they've gone about, installing energy efficiency equipment, if that's being managed well, and so on and so forth. And often people have replied here that we're trying to engender behavior change around travel patterns or use of equipment in the classroom to reduce energy. And we don't know, and there's no information in the survey about whether that is effective. What impact does it actually have on the school's environmental footprint? That data is not available from the survey. Another limitation, of course, is the fact that it's just 25 questions, and we are in the process of developing a much more extensive survey. But to complete that survey, it might be 75 or 100 questions. It's going to require a lot more effort. So I think it will take time to build up the data from a large number of schools. Small sample size, I've spoken about. And the last comment I want to make is about self-reporting bias. It's difficult to, of course, know to what extent the survey answers are biased, but one thing we do know is that many schools we talk to tell us, some of them tell us this after they've sent the survey in, they tell us that it's not as good as it looks. So we might read on their website that the school's doing all these great things, and then when we get into a discussion with them, they at some point confess that it's not as good as it looks, and they don't like to talk about the challenges. They certainly don't like to publicize the challenges on their website. And I suspect some of that frame of mind creeps into the responses of the survey. So obviously, some of them will be very honest and transparent in filling out the survey because they want a real measure of where they are, but others, I think, will fill it in because they fill it in reflecting where they would like to be, or where they perceive themselves to be, rather than where they actually are. So I think there's a certain amount of bias here, but it's really hard to untangle. That's all I want to say, but I would love to have a conversation with you and get more feedback on any of this. Very eager to refine it and to hear what people have to say. Yes.
May I ask a question?
Yes. Maya, please go.
Yeah. Are you planning on giving back the information to the schools? Are you planning on having like a consultation process, trying to help them to be more sustainable or to develop into a more sustainable direction? So how's the process after your results? What are your next plans?
Yes, great question. This is for us also a bit of a marketing tool, a way of starting a conversation with a school and finding out where they are and where they might need help. So yes, we provide a written report that is automatically generated that gives the school feedback on their responses, compares them to the statistics that we've gathered from the other schools, anonymized, of course, and makes some concrete suggestions about how they could go to the next step or take the conversation further if they're interested in doing that. We hope that this leads to engagement with us, because we're passionate about helping schools move forward in this journey, and we really firmly believe in the transformative potential of this work, not only from an educational perspective, but societally. If all schools were on this journey and committed to it, I think in 20 years we would be in a very different place. I am going to let me stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'm going to post in the chat the link to the survey so that you can have a look at it for yourself.
Would you like schools from, like, for example, in Norway to fill it out, or are you just wanting it for schools?
We would be delighted for any school that's interested to fill it out. Yeah. I mean, from the perspective of having the data, I think it's really interesting. You know, correct me if you tell me if you know of anything else that's doing this, any other repository of data. I mean, I don't even know if EcoSchools has published, you know, data other than perhaps energy use intensity, you know, kilowatt hours per square meter. Maybe they have that information. But I know in the US that the Department of Energy, or maybe even Green Schools Alliance, I think somewhere in there, Green Building Council, you can probably find data on kilowatt hours per square meter for schools. And in some places, I've seen that information, but it's not easily accessible. And I've never seen large-scale comparisons of it. And of course, that's not what we're trying to gather in this particular survey. It's a bit more qualitative. But nevertheless, you know, it's just, we heard a lot of talk in the last couple of days from people saying, actually, it was the chap from SLO yesterday morning who said we need to try to define what we mean by sustainable schools, if I understood him correctly, and we need to have some parameters for assessing, you know, where is the school on this sustainability journey? And so this is the first attempt to do that, and any data is useful at the moment, I think. But I'd like to have 500 schools in the data set. So please get your school contacts to fill it out. 5 minutes is...
You say that then they will get back some advice, so they do get something back at the end.
Yeah, as soon as they finish it, they get an email. It's an automatically generated report, but it's got a little bit of AI in there, so it interprets where they are and gives them feedback that is appropriate to their stage. So it's not going to say to a school that's a trailblazer, you need to put solar panels on the roof, because they probably already do that. But it's also not going to say to a school that is at the very starting point here that they should take these big leaps and bounds, because they're not ready to do that, chances are.
I think that's where the potential, in my opinion, lies in this, is if there could be these, it's like an entry point, isn't it? And then the advice that gets given back, if that can be also connected to the people in the country that, you know, it's because I think we really do need, okay, it's good maybe to have some competition in some situations, but to learn from each other and, you know, get ideas from each other, I think is a really good way. And I think in some countries, maybe it's not about us being assessed, but assessing ourselves or learning from each other. If there's a way to find those connections, it's good. But thank you.